The night was supposed to be quiet. Elias Ward sat at the small kitchen table, a cracked mug of lukewarm tea in his hands. The wind outside howled around the edges of the prefab house, making the metal walls creak and complain. Haven Ridge was not a comfortable place to live. It was cold, dry, and lonely, a small human colony on the edge of known space. But it was cheap, and it was far away from the memories he did not want to face on Earth. In the bedroom, his daughter Mina slept under 2 blankets, curled up with a worn-out plush bear that was missing one eye. Elias glanced at the door every few minutes, listening for any sound from her. Even after all these years, part of him still woke up at the slightest noise, ready to rush to her side. He told himself that was just what single fathers did. They stayed alert. They stayed ready. They kept going. He rubbed his eyes with one hand and pulled his old jacket tighter around himself with the other. The heater in the house worked, technically, but the cold on this planet seemed to slip through everything, like fingers of ice reaching straight into his bones. He was thinking about whether they had enough fuel for the week when the sky screamed. It was not thunder. There were no storms in the clear night. The sound was sharp, violent, and wrong, like metal tearing itself apart. The walls shook, and the lights flickered. Elias was on his feet before the mug stopped rattling on the table. A bright flash of white-blue light cut across the night outside the small window. It was gone in a second, swallowed by the black sky, but a trail of burning orange followed it down toward the hills east of the colony. Then came the impact. The ground shuddered with a distant but heavy thud. A second later, the muffled sound of an explosion rolled across the frozen landscape. The lights went out completely, leaving the house in darkness. "Dad?" Mina's small, sleepy voice came from the bedroom, trembling a little. "I'm here," Elias called, already moving. "It's okay. Power outage. Just stay in bed, Starshine." He found the small emergency lamp by touch, flicked it on, and soft yellow light filled the room. Mina was sitting up, hair messy, eyes wide and confused. "What was that?" she whispered. "Probably a ship," he said, trying to sound calm. "Maybe a crash. I'll go check if the colony needs help. You stay here. Lock the door behind me, okay?" Her hands grabbed the blanket tighter. "Are you coming back?" He smiled and ruffled her hair. "Always." She nodded slowly. "Okay. Be safe." Elias grabbed his thick coat from the wall hook, pulled on his boots, and took his small emergency pack. Thermal blanket, first aid kit, a flare gun, and a compact plasma cutter. He hesitated for a moment, looking back at Mina. She was watching him, face half hidden in the blanket. "I'll be back before you can count all the stars," he said softly. She tried to smile. "That's a lot of stars." "Then I'll hurry." Outside, the cold hit him like a wall. The night sky above Haven Ridge was beautiful if you ignored the way the air tried to bite your face off. Thousands of stars shone sharp and clear above the dark land, and the strange crescent of the planet's broken moon glowed faintly on the horizon. But tonight, something else marked the sky. A thin line of smoke and fire rising from beyond the hills. Elias started walking, then picked up speed into a jog. The colony's emergency channel crackled in his earpiece, voices overlapping, reports of a possible meteor, maybe a crashed ship. Some people were heading to the main communications hub. Others were being told to stay inside until they knew more. Elias did not respond. He kept moving. The snow under his boots was thin but hard, like a layer of frozen dust. The wind cut across the plain, making his eyes water. His breath came out in small clouds that vanished quickly in the darkness. He knew this terrain. He had walked it many times, looking for quiet places where he could think, where Mina could play without being bothered by other children who sometimes asked too many questions about why she only had one parent. Tonight there was nothing quiet about it. As he got closer to the impact site, He could see a dull orange glow behind the ridge. Another small tremor ran through the ground, and a faint crackling sound reached his ears, like metal cooling after being heated. He climbed the rocky slope, boots slipping once on loose stones. At the top, he stopped. The crater was not as big as he expected, but it was deep. Steam and smoke rose from it, twisting together in strange shapes in the cold air. Bits of glowing metal were scattered around the rim, still burning bright against the dark ground. Some pieces hummed softly, like machinery trying and failing to keep working. At the center of the crater, half buried in dirt and fractured ice, was something that was not a meteor. It was a pod, a damaged escape pod by the look of it. Oval, dark metal, with sections torn open as if something had clawed its way out, or in. Symbols Elias did not recognize glowed faintly along the side, in colors that seemed to shift when he looked at them directly. Elias's heart beat faster. He slid down the edge of the crater, careful not to step on anything glowing too brightly. The heat grew stronger as he moved closer to the pod. He lifted his arm to shield his face and squinted through the steam. That was when something moved. Near the broken opening of the pod, a shape shifted. It was large, bigger than him, and hunched over. For one moment, Elias thought it was some kind of animal, wounded and angry. Then it raised its head. Two golden eyes looked at him through the haze. Elias froze. The figure stepped forward, stumbling slightly. The steam cleared just enough for him to see more details. It was humanoid, yes, but not human. Scales covered its skin, shimmering with faint purple and green highlights like oil on water. Horn-like ridges adorned the top of its head, sweeping back like a crown broken in battle. A long, heavy tail dragged behind it, leaving a black line in the dirt. Armor covered parts of its body, though much of it was melted or cracked. Strange patterns glowed faintly along the chest plate, forming shapes that looked almost like wings. A symbol near the collar shone brighter than the rest, though it flickered and dimmed as the figure struggled to keep standing. The alien, if that was what it was, took another step and slipped, falling to one knee. A harsh breath escaped its mouth, visible in the cold air. Elias swallowed, his throat dry. He knew about aliens, of course. Humanity had made contact with other species decades ago. But the Drakari, the dragon people of the stars, were another story. He had seen their images in news briefings long ago. Tall, scaled, powerful, feared. An empire that stretched across sectors humans only dreamed of exploring. And the symbol on this alien's armor looked very much like the one he remembered seeing in those broadcasts. The crest of the Drakari Dominion. He should have turned around. He should have called the colony and let the military or security teams handle this. He was just a technician, a dad who fixed old machines and cooked cheap meals to get through the week. But the figure in front of him was injured. And despite the armor and the sharp claws and the dangerous reputation, there was something in the way it trembled that looked fragile. "Stay back," the alien said, voice rough and low. The words were accented, but it spoke standard. "You should not approach. It is not safe." Elias blinked in surprise. He had expected roars, threats, something terrifying. He had not expected a warning for his sake. "You're hurt," he replied, his own voice sounding thin in his ears. "And this planet is freezing. You won't last long out here." He realized now from the tone, the shape of the body, and the faint, regal posture, even while half collapsed, lifted her head with difficulty. "You will leave," she said. "This is an order." Elias raised an eyebrow, despite his fear. "I don't take orders from people who just fell out of the sky and landed in my backyard." Her eyes narrowed, a faint spark of something sharper lighting in their depths. For a second, he thought she might attack. But then she swayed again, and her tail dragged heavier against the ground. "The cold," she muttered. This world is hostile. My blood slows. She was shivering. He could see it now under the armor, the small but constant tremors running through her body. Each breath came harder than the last. He glanced back toward the colony lights, far in the distance, then down at the alien in front of him. "Look," he said, slowing his words, keeping his hands open and visible. "I have a shelter. Heat. Medical supplies. A kid who will be worried if I don't come back. I can't just leave you here to freeze, so either you walk with me or I try to drag you, and I'm not strong enough for that. So please, work with me." She stared at him for a long moment, as if trying to decide if he was brave or stupid. "Humyn," she said at last, the word heavy with something like disbelief. "Do you know who I am?" "No," Elias admitted. "But I know what happens to living things when they stay in this cold too long. They stop moving." Slowly, painfully, she pushed herself to her feet. She stood taller now, at least a head above him, even hunched. The golden eyes never left his face. "I am Azira," she said, "last Empress of the Drakari Dominion." The title hung in the air like another explosion. Elias's stomach twisted. The Drakari Empress, the ruler of one of the most powerful species in the galaxy, the one whose commands had shaped wars and treaties and the fate of whole systems, and here she was, shaking in a smoking crater on a forgotten colony world, barely able to stand. "Okay," he said slowly because his brain refused to find anything smarter. "Azira, good to meet you. I'm Elias. I fix broken things. Tonight seems on brand." "Your world will suffer for sheltering me," she warned softly. "They followed. They always follow." "Yeah, well," Elias muttered, gesturing toward the direction of the colony. "We'll deal with that when it arrives. Right now you're freezing, and I need to get home to my daughter." He offered his hand out of pure habit. She stared at it, clearly not used to the gesture, then did something that shocked him. She took it. Her hand, clawed and scaled, was burning hot to the touch, heat radiating from it like a furnace. He almost flinched but forced himself to hold on. Together, they climbed out of the crater, step by step. At the rim, the wind hit her full force. She staggered, head dropping for a moment, teeth clenched. Her armor's failing systems flickered, trying to compensate. But the cold cut through everything. "Hurry," she breathed. "Before my fire goes out." Elias tightened his grip. "Then let's not waste time." Side by side, a tired human father and a shivering dragon empress, they began the long walk back toward the faint lights of Haven Ridge, under a sky full of silent stars that had just witnessed the start of something none of them yet understood. The walk back to Haven Ridge felt longer than Elias remembered. The cold night pressed around them like a heavy blanket made of ice. Even though the sky was clear, the air carried a sharp bite that made every breath sting. Snow crunched under their boots and claws, and the wind turned their shadows thin and shaky on the frozen ground. Azira moved slowly, each step filled with effort. Her tall figure shook with a deep trembling that she tried to hide. Elias could feel the vibration through her grip on his arm. Every few minutes she would stumble, and Elias would steady her again. She said nothing about it, but the shivers were getting worse. "Your species," she said quietly after a while, breathing heavily. "How do you live on such a frozen world? It is unbearable." "This isn't normal for us either," Elias replied, pulling his coat tighter. "Haven Ridge is cheap land, so it attracts people trying to start over, like me." Azira looked at him with confused golden eyes. "Start over?" "Later," he said. "One thing at a time. First we get you warm." The wind gusted again, stronger this time. Azira's tail dragged slower behind her, making a wavering line in the thin layer of snow. Her armor lights dimmed to faint blue sparks. She didn't complain, but the silence around her felt heavy. like she was fighting a battle inside her body. "How cold does it need to be before it becomes dangerous to you?" Elias asked. "It already is dangerous," she answered. "Drakari bodies need high heat to function. Our blood is fire-touched. In this climate, my flame dims too quickly." Elias looked at her again, at the way her breath came out as small clouds of white. "Well then," he muttered, "let's keep that flame alive." They continued their slow walk, step by step. The small lights of Haven Ridge glowed far ahead, steady but distant. Elias kept glancing at them, checking the distance, knowing their safety depended on reaching those lights in time. At one point, Azira stopped completely. Her legs shook, and she leaned heavily on Elias. "Sorry," she said in a strained voice. "My limbs, they are not responding well." Elias braced her with both hands. "Hey, no stopping. Lean on me if you need to. We're close." Azira's eyes narrowed with frustration or pride. It was hard to tell. "Drakari rulers do not lean." "Well," Elias said firmly, "then consider this an exception. Empresses can lean when they're freezing." To his surprise, she let out a very soft sound, halfway between a sigh and a dry laugh. Then she allowed him to help her walk again. The closer they got to the colony, the more visible the settlement became. Tall metal frames, glowing heat lamps, and thick walls meant to keep out the brutal windstorms. Smoke rose gently from the chimneys of the HAB units. Even from far away, the warm lights felt inviting. "You live here?" Azira asked softly, voice weak but curious. "For now," Elias said. "It may not be pretty, but it's home." "Strange," she murmured. "I crossed galaxies. I commanded fleets. I walked through shining halls of crystal fire. And now, I am shivering outside a human shelter." "Life is unpredictable," Elias answered. "Trust me, I know." Azira did not reply, but he noticed she stayed closer to him, her steps matching his. The trembling in her limbs grew stronger, and Elias quickened their pace. By the time they reached the first metal fence of Haven Ridge, Azira was nearly collapsing with each step. The security lights flashed on the moment they approached. A red beam scanned across Elias first, then moved toward Azira. Elias quickly raised his hand to interrupt it. "Don't scan her!" he shouted to the sensor mic. The system paused. "Reason?" asked the automated voice. "She's injured," Elias said. "And her biology is not made for this climate. System scan might trigger a reaction." There was a short pause. Then the security gate buzzed open. Elias helped Azira through the entrance. Inside the colony walls, the air was still cold but not deadly. Heat lamps glowed along the ground, melting patches of frost. The narrow walkways between the housing units were quiet at this hour. Most families were asleep. A few lights flickered behind windows, and one or two dogs barked in the distance. Azira's gaze moved slowly across everything. The metal walls, the simple lamps, the small homes with their rounded corners and cheap plastic windows. It was all so different from the grand empire she had once ruled. "This place," she said softly, "is simple." "Yeah," Elias admitted. "People here don't have much, but they work hard. They help each other, mostly." Azira's eyes softened slightly, as if she was seeing something more meaningful in the simplicity. They reached Elias's small unit near the far end of the colony. The porch light flickered weakly, as if trying its best but almost giving up. Elias fumbled for the access key, finally unlocking the door. Warmth greeted them inside, just barely enough to notice, but for Azira it probably felt like a furnace. She inhaled sharply as the heat touched her skin. "Better?" Elias asked. She nodded, though she still shivered. Elias guided her toward a low bench near the heater. Azira sank onto it heavily, trying to hide the exhaustion in her movements. Her scales glowed slightly brighter in the indoor light, reflecting purples and greens like polished gemstones. Elias removed his coat and hung it by the door. He tapped the control panel on the wall to boost the heating system. The heater hummed louder and pushed out warm air with a soft buzz. "Stay close to the heater," he said. "It'll help." Ajira extended her hands toward the warm air. Her claws were long and sharp, but her fingers trembled so much she almost looked fragile. Elias tried not to stare, but it was strange to see a powerful alien ruler looking so vulnerable. "You risked much bringing me," she said quietly. "Your colony may not accept this." "They don't need to know yet," Elias replied. "First, you survived the night." Ajira lowered her head. "I am not used to being helped." "Well," Elias said, "get used to it." She stared at him again, long and thoughtful. "Why do you care? You could have left me in the crater." "Because you're alive," Elias answered simply. "And you needed help. That's enough." She blinked slowly, as if trying to understand that logic. "Humans, your species is strange." "I've heard that before," Elias said with a small smile. Suddenly, Ajira's body tightened, and she wrapped her arms around herself. Her teeth, sharp like polished stone, clenched as another wave of cold hit her. "Are you okay?" Elias asked, stepping closer. "My inner fire. It cannot warm me enough in this temperature," she said through gritted teeth. "I need higher heat." Elias grabbed his emergency thermal kit from the cabinet. He pulled out the thick thermal blanket, silver on one side, dark blue on the other. "This should help," he said, bringing it to her. Ajira looked at the blanket as if it was some strange and delicate artifact. She reached out with shaking hands and touched it. "It is warm," she murmured, "but not enough." Elias frowned. "Not enough?" Ajira hesitated. Her pride seemed to battle with her need. Finally, she turned her face away and whispered, "Your body heat would help." Elias froze in place. Not because the idea was strange or embarrassing, but because the quiet way she asked told him how desperate she really was. The Empress of the Drakari Dominion, survivor of a fallen empire, was trembling like a leaf. She continued, voice barely above a breath. "May I share your blanket?" "Only until the cold passes." Elias blinked. "You mean sit next to you? For warmth?" "Yes," she said. "Drakari share body heat in times of danger. It is the only way to preserve the inner fire. But if this is improper for humans, I will endure alone." She said the last part with stubborn determination. But the shaking betrayed her. Elias took a slow breath. "It's not improper," he said. "It's survival. And you're freezing. Move over. I'm sitting down." Ajira looked surprised, almost relieved. She weakly shifted to one side. Elias wrapped half the thermal blanket around her shoulders, then sat beside her, letting the other half fall over him. Their shoulders touched, and he felt her heat, still fading, still weak, but strong enough to be felt through her cracked armor. She tensed at first. Drakari were not used to close contact, not like this, especially with other species. But as the warmth spread, she relaxed by degrees. "You are warm," she whispered. "And you're still shaking," Elias replied. "We'll stay like this until you're steady." They sat near the heater, sharing the blanket, sharing warmth, sharing silence. Ajira's breathing slowly became deeper and steadier. The trembling in her limbs calmed. Her scales glowed brighter again, soft but healthy. After a long time, she spoke. "Elias Ward," she said quietly, "I do not understand you." "That makes two of us," he replied with a tired smile. She turned her head slightly toward him. "But, thank you." And for the first time since she had fallen from the sky, Elias saw something in her eyes that was not fear, pain, or royal pride. It was trust. A pale orange glow crept across the sky, turning the frost-covered buildings into quiet silhouettes. Inside the small house, Elias woke before the heater clicked on. His eyes opened to a soft, steady sound, a calm breath that did not belong to him. Ajira was still beside him, sitting on the bench with the blanket over her shoulders. She wasn't shivering anymore. Her scales glowed with a gentle warmth like embers resting after a long burn. During the night, her posture had relaxed. She no longer looked like she was fighting for every heartbeat. Elias stretched stiffly. Sleeping half upright against the wall was not kind to his back. "I see you survived the night," he said quietly. Ajira turned her head, golden eyes faintly shining. "Thanks to your fire." "That was just a blanket and body heat," Elias replied. "For a Drakari," she said, "it was more than enough." She gave him something almost like a smile, though the expression on her face looked unfamiliar, as if she was still learning how to show gratitude. Before Elias could answer, soft footsteps echoed behind the door of the bedroom. Mina peeked out, rubbing her eyes with her small hands. Her gaze drifted across the room and froze when she saw Ajira. For a whole second, no one moved. Elias stood quickly and walked between them. "Mina, it's okay," he said gently. "She's a guest. She needed help." Mina blinked, shy but not afraid. Children in Haven Ridge were used to strange things. Broken machines, weird storms, new settlers with odd clothes and stranger stories. But Azira was different. "Hi," Mina whispered, hiding half her face behind her plush bear. Azira inclined her head with surprising grace. "Greetings, small human." Mina's eyes went wide. "You talk." "Yes," Azira replied with dignity. "I also freeze. That made last night difficult." Mina giggled softly, the tension breaking. She stepped out from behind the bear. "Are you a dragon?" Azira straightened her back proudly. "I am Drakari. I am Azira, Empress of—" Elias quickly raised a hand, making a subtle gesture for her to keep the title quiet. Mina did not need the weight of galactic politics before breakfast. Azira paused, considered, then nodded once. "Azira," she finished simply. Mina smiled brightly. "Azira is a nice name." Then she whispered to her father. "Her eyes are shiny." Elias chuckled, relieved the moment went well. But that peaceful feeling lasted only a moment, because the next second, the house lights flickered twice, not from a power issue this time, but from an alert signal. A loud chime echoed across the whole colony. "All residents, emergency meeting at Central Square. Repeat, all residents, emergency meeting at Central Square." Elias stiffened. "That's bad." Azira's posture changed instantly. Her warmth dimmed, replaced by focused tension. "They found something." Elias grabbed his coat. "Stay here with Mina, I'll check." Azira rose to her full height. "No, I will come." "You're still recovering," he protested. "My strength is returning," she said, and he could tell it was true. She stood straighter, the glow in her scales pulsing steadily. Her tail flicked once, sharp and alert. She was not the exhausted figure from last night. She was an Empress again, injured, yes, but aware and dangerous if needed. Elias sighed. "Fine, stay close, and try not to scare anyone." Azira lifted her chin. "I do not try to scare. It simply happens." Mina giggled again. "She's funny." The colony gathers. The central square was already crowded when Elias arrived with Azira following behind him like a silent shadow. People whispered the moment they saw her. Some stepped back. Others stared openly. A few clutched their tools or weapons, hands shaking. Elias moved a little closer to Azira, not to protect her, but to stop anyone from doing something stupid. At the front of the square, Commander Raina Holt, the head of security, stood on a raised platform. She was tall, sharp-eyed, and had the tired look of someone who hadn't slept in days. When she spoke, her voice was clipped and heavy. 2 hours ago, she announced. Our orbital sensors detected incoming objects. Unknown origin, unknown purpose. They did not announce themselves. They did not respond to signals. Screens flickered to life behind her, showing black space dotted with silver shapes. Elias felt Azira tense beside him. The commander continued, They entered our orbit. They are now descending in scout formations. We believe they may be hostile. Murmurs spread through the crowd like wildfire. People looked at one another with fear in their eyes. Azira whispered, voice low and grim. They followed me. Elias turned quickly. Who followed you? She didn't look away from the screen. The swarm. Swarm? Of what? Machines, she said simply. They devour entire worlds. Elias's mouth went dry. A moment later, Commander Holt raised her hand for silence. We need all residents indoors. Soldiers will take positions. Engineers will support power shields. Anyone with medical training should prepare shelters. Then her eyes fell directly on Azira. There was no mistaking who she was looking at. Elias, she called sharply. Step forward. Elias swallowed hard and obeyed. Azira followed, much to the discomfort of every soldier whose path she passed. Commander Holt looked him over, then stared openly at Azira. Is this the visitor you found last night? She asked. Elias nodded slowly. Yes. Holt exhaled through her teeth. You know you broke about 10 security rules, right? Probably, Elias said. Holt turned to Azira. You, identify yourself. Azira stood tall. I am Azira, last Empress of the Drakari Dominion. Gasps broke out across the square. People stepped back. Some looked ready to run. Holt lifted her eyebrows. Empress. Right. And what exactly are those things in orbit? Friends of yours? No. Azira's voice was cold and heavy. They destroyed my empire. They slaughtered billions. They are machines built to consume everything. They detected my escape pod. They will not leave until they find me. The commander stared at her for a long time. Then she turned to Elias. You brought an intergalactic war into my colony. Elias sighed. To be fair, she was freezing. Holt covered her face with her hand. Why do things like this happen here? Why this colony? Before Elias could answer, Azira spoke again, her tone regal and unshaken. Your colony is now in danger because of me. Allow me to help you defend it. Soldiers murmured, unsure whether to trust her. Commander Holt narrowed her eyes. And why should we believe you? Azira lifted her arm. A faint glow burned beneath the cracked armor, her inner fire. Because I know how to fight them, she said. I fought them for years. I lost everything to them. If they reach the ground here, your people will not survive. But I can stop them. At least for a while. Elias looked at her. There was no hesitation in her voice, no pride, just fierce purpose. She's telling the truth, he said quietly. Holt looked from Azira to Elias, weighing the trust between them. She finally nodded once. Fine, but if you make one wrong move, Azira finished calmly, you may try to stop me. The soldiers flinched at her confidence, but Holt just muttered, Humans always get the strangest allies. The first attack. A sharp alarm suddenly blasted across the square. Red lights flashed. Soldiers ran to their stations. Commander Holt shouted into her headset, Report! A voice crackled through. We have visual contact. Enemy scout drones approaching from the east. Fast-moving, metallic spheres with cutting arms. Shields not ready yet. Azira stepped forward. The swarm! Elias's heart pounded. What do we do? Azira turned toward him, her inner fire lighting her eyes. You protect your daughter. I will protect your colony. Before Elias could stop her, she leaped forward, moving faster than any human could. Her claws dug into the ground for speed. Sparks danced across her armor as faint energy awakened around her. Mina, watching from behind a window, gasped. She's so fast. Elias wanted to run after her, but the commander grabbed his arm. "Don't! She knows what she's doing, and you, get your daughter to safety." Elias hesitated only a second before sprinting back to his house. Azira meets the swarm beyond the colony's eastern wall. Metal shapes streaked through the sky like silver comets. Their spinning blades cut the air, making a shrill whining sound. Blue lights scanned the ground, searching. Hungry, Azira ran straight toward them. The first drone swooped low, aiming its sharp limbs at her. She planted her feet, inhaled deeply, and released a blast of burning blue fire. The flame crashed into the drone like a wall of heat. The metal sphere melted, collapsing into a puddle of glowing liquid on the frozen earth. Soldiers watching from the walls stared in shock. "She took it down with one breath." "She's not lying. She really is Drakari." But Azira did not celebrate. She looked up at the sky as more drones descended. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Her hands tightened into fists. "This world will not fall," she whispered. "Not today." Inside the house, Elias burst through the door, breathless. Mina rushed to him, fear shining in her eyes. "Dad! Azira is fighting outside." "I know," he said, kneeling to her height. "We need to stay safe. Come on." He grabbed the emergency kit and pulled Mina close. As explosions echoed in the distance, he whispered, "She helped us. Now we help her by staying alive." Mina nodded bravely. "We'll wait for her. She'll win." Elias hoped that was true. He truly, deeply hoped. Because outside, the sky was filling with metal, and Azira, though powerful, was still recovering, still alone, and still hunted. Dawn had barely touched the sky when the first wave of drones hit the colony's outer wall. Their metal bodies sliced through the air with sharp, whining sounds, and their blue scanner lights flashed across the buildings like cold eyes searching for prey. Azira stood in the snow outside the colony, facing them alone. Her breath rose in short bursts of steam in the freezing air, but her inner fire glowed brighter and fiercer with every passing second. Her scales shimmered like heated metal. Her claws dug deep into the icy ground as she braced herself. One drone shot toward her, spinning like a deadly wheel. Azira lowered her stance and launched upward with a powerful leap. She twisted in the air, releasing a small burst of fire to push her momentum even higher. Her heel struck the drone with crushing force, sending it crashing into another. Both machines fell to the ground in sparks, but for every drone she destroyed, 3 more arrived. "Empress Azira!" A cold, metallic voice echoed from the largest drone hovering above the others. "You cannot escape!" Azira's tail lashed behind her. "You will not touch this colony." The swarm leader rotated slowly, blue lights narrowing. "Your resistance is meaningless. Your empire has fallen. You are the last flame, and we will extinguish you." Azira lowered her head, teeth baring. "Then burn with me." She inhaled. Her chest glowed. Then, a great wave of blue fire roared from her mouth. The swarm leader dodged aside, but the blast consumed several drones behind it. Metal melted like wax. The air sizzled. But the effort drained her quickly. Her breath trembled. Her knees weakened. She tried to release another blast, but only a faint spark came out. "Not yet. Not now." The swarm closed in. Inside the colony, Elias stood at his window, eyes wide as he watched Azira struggle. Every blast of fire lit up the sky. Every explosion shook the ground. Mina grabbed his shirt tightly. "Dad, she's fighting alone." "I know," Elias whispered, his heart pounding. Commander Holt's voice came through the colony speakers. "All units prepare counterfire. Shield generators at 50%. We cannot let them breach." A loud shriek echoed as a drone smashed into the outer wall. Elias made a decision. He grabbed his toolkit, slung it over his shoulder, and turned toward Mina. "Stay here. Don't open the door for anyone except me or Azira, okay?" Mina shook her head quickly. "No. You can't go." Elias crouched and held her hands gently. Starshine, listen. Azira saved us. She saved everyone. Now she needs help. Not fighting, but something else. What? Mina whispered. A plan, Elias said. A way to stop the swarm without burning her alive. Mina bit her lip. Promise you'll come back? I promise. She hugged him hard, then stepped back, eyes watery. Elias squeezed her shoulder, then rushed outside. A battle of metal and flame. Elias ran through the colony streets as drones flew overhead. Soldiers shouted orders, firing plasma rifles at any drone that came too close. Sparks rained from the sky. The cold morning air stank of melted metal. He spotted Commander Holt near the power station, shouting into a communicator. "Holt!" Elias yelled as he arrived. She turned, shocked to see him. "Elias, what are you doing out here? Get back inside!" "I have an idea," he said quickly. "I need access to the damaged alien armor we pulled from the crater last night." Holt narrowed her eyes. "That glowing piece? The one your guest was wearing?" "Yes, that one." "That thing looks dangerous." "It is dangerous," Elias said. "It's also powerful. And right now, we need powerful." Holt hesitated only a second. Then she barked at two engineers. "Bring the alien armor core here. Now!" The engineers sprinted toward the storage unit. Holt faced Elias again. "Explain." "The drones are tracking Azira using her armor's old beacon frequency," Elias said. "The armor is damaged, but its core might still have energy left. If we can boost that core using human power cells, we can create a bigger signal." Holt frowned. "Why would we want that? We don't want them coming toward us." "Not us," Elias corrected. "Something else, a trap." Holt blinked. "You want to lure them?" "Yes," Elias answered, chest rising with urgency. "They're focused on Azira. If we can make a stronger signal somewhere else, they'll follow it. Then Azira can recover. Then we hit them with everything we've got." Holt stared at him, stunned, then slowly nodded. "I hate that this might actually work," she muttered. "It's very human to take something broken," Elias said with a small grin, "and turn it into a weapon." Holt smirked, despite herself. "Engineers, move!" The hybrid device. The engineers dragged the cracked Drakari chest plate to the power station. Its core glowed faintly, like a dying star. Elias knelt beside it and opened his toolkit. "What do you need?" Holt asked. 3 high-capacity power cells, 2 interface cables, and a stabilizer node." "On it." Elias's hands moved fast. He pried open the armor plate, revealing glowing circuits arranged like veins. He connected human power cells, taped them down, tightened clamps, adjusted voltage. Blue sparks danced up his gloves. "Careful," Holt warned. "That looks like it wants to explode." "It probably does," Elias said. "But explosions are kind of the point today." The core pulsed brighter. A rising hum filled the air. "Signal strength increasing," an engineer reported. "Good," Elias said. "Let's raise it until every drone in orbit sees it." Holt stared at him. "Are you sure you weren't a war strategist in a past life?" "No," Elias replied, wiping sweat from his forehead despite the cold. "Just a dad who fixes things." Azira weakens. Outside the wall, Azira could barely stand. Her fire was fading. Her armor cracked again. Dozens of drones surrounded her, circling like vultures. She sliced one with her claws, smashed another with her tail, but even her strength had limits. The swarm leader hovered above her, cold and sharp. "Your flame dims, Empress," it said. "Submit." Azira spat weak sparks. "I do not submit." Her legs buckled. She fell to one knee. The drones closed in. The decoy signal. Suddenly, a shrill wave of energy pulsed across the land. The drones stopped, all at once. Their lights flickered. They turned away from Azira. The swarm leader spoke in a metallic hiss. "New signal detected. Stronger. Drakari frequency. Priority target. Investigating." The entire swarm rotated toward the colony's western field and flew away from Azira like a metallic storm. Azira collapsed to the ground, gasping. Steam rose from her scales. Her claws dug weakly into the snow. "What did the humans do?" she whispered. Inside the power station. "It's working!" an engineer shouted. Elias let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. "Thank the stars." Commander Holt raised binoculars to the sky. "They're all heading west. Every last drone." "Good," Elias said. "But we can't just lure them. We have to finish it." Holt lowered the binoculars. "You mean destroy them?" "Yes," Elias said firmly. "Azira can't fight anymore. Her fire's almost gone. But if we time the blast right—" "The core," Holt finished. "If it overloads, it'll create an EMP shock big enough to fry them." Elias nodded. "Exactly." Holt sighed. "And this is the part where we run for our lives, right?" "And pray it doesn't take out the entire colony," Elias added sheepishly. "You could have left that part out," Holt muttered. Azira staggers inside the door burst open. Azira stumbled in, leaning heavily against the wall. Her armor smoked. Her breath shook, but her eyes blazed, fierce, determined. "You made a decoy," she said through heavy breaths. "Yes," Elias answered. "We're going to use it to destroy the swarm." Azira stared at him. "You risked yourselves to save me." "You're not the only one fighting," Elias replied simply. Azira smiled weakly. "Humans, always surprising." Her legs gave out. Elias rushed to catch her. She was hot, burning hot, but trembling like someone freezing inside. "You can't stay up," he murmured. She clenched his arm. "I can help. The device needs fire, Drakari energy. I can ignite the overload." Elias looked alarmed. "Azira, that could kill you." "It might," she admitted. "But the swarm will kill everyone if we do nothing." Holt stepped forward. "There must be another way." "There is not," Azira said. "Let me fight. One last time." Elias stared into her glowing eyes and knew she was not lying. She was ready to sacrifice herself. "No," he said suddenly. Azira blinked. "What?" "You're not doing this alone," Elias said. "I can help stabilize it. Human hands, Drakari fire. Together we can control the overload." Azira stared at him like he was insane. "You would stand beside me, even if it kills you?" Elias held her gaze. "You trusted me last night. Let me trust you today." Azira looked away, overwhelmed by something she didn't have a name for. When she looked back, her voice was soft. "Very well, Elias Ward. Together." Commander Holt groaned loudly. "This is the worst idea I've ever agreed to. But fine. Let's go blow up some robots." The final move begins. Elias supported Azira as they walked toward the western fields, where the swarm hovered like a dark cloud above the decoy device. The alien core glowed brighter and brighter, ready to burst. Elias swallowed hard. Azira raised her clawed hand. "Ready, Elias?" He nodded, heart racing. "Let's save this colony." Azira took a deep breath. Her inner fire rose. The hybrid device hummed. And together, they reached for the core. The explosion hadn't happened yet. The final battle still waited. But in that moment, standing side by side, Humyn and Drakari, two broken lives burned with new purpose. Together. The air was electric. The hybrid device hummed like a living thing, glowing brighter and hotter with every passing second. Elias stood beside Azira, his hands trembling as they steadied the Drakari armor core. She leaned slightly into him, her golden eyes blazing, fire dancing beneath her cracked scales. Outside, the swarm drones hovered in the sky, their metallic forms gleaming in the pale morning light. They were countless, but at that moment Elias felt something he hadn't felt in years, hope. "Ready?" Azira asked, voice low but firm. Elias swallowed. Ready. They took a deep breath together. He placed his hands on the stabilizer controls, and she rested hers over the glowing armor core. Their combined energy, human ingenuity, and Drakari fire pulsed into the device. A high-pitched vibration filled the air. The ground trembled lightly beneath their feet. Azira's wings, small at first and folded against her back, began to shimmer and expand slightly. She hissed as her fire flared. "Elias, keep it steady. We have only one chance." Elias nodded, tightening his grip. "I won't let go." The swarm attacks. The drones began to descend again, drawn to the massive energy signature. Their blue scanning lights swept over the field, searching for the source. Some fired plasma beams at the decoy, but it was too late. They had already been lured. "Here they come!" a soldier shouted from the colony wall. Azira twisted in the air and released a controlled blast of fire, burning through the closest drone. Sparks and smoke filled the sky as one machine after another fell. Yet even with the decoy, the swarm still moved faster than any human thought possible. Their numbers seemed endless. "Almost there," Elias muttered, focusing on the stabilizer. "We just need the overload to sink." Azira's tail lashed behind her. "Hurry, Elias, or we will not survive this." The hum of the hybrid device grew louder, vibrating through their bones. Elias could feel the immense power inside, like a storm waiting to break. He glanced at Azira. Her golden eyes met his, full of trust. In that instant, he understood something vital. This was not just a battle of fire and metal, it was a battle of wills. Humanity and Drakari together could stand against the swarm. The moment of truth. Finally, the device reached full resonance. Blue and silver arcs of energy leaped from the core. Elias and Azira's combined effort held it steady. "Now!" Azira shouted. The overload erupted in a wave of bright pulsing light. The sound was deafening, a hum that turned into a roar. Every drone in the sky froze mid-air. Sparks flew and energy arcs crackled across the swarm. One by one, their metal bodies shut down, smoke rising like small clouds of defeat. The swarm leader, the largest drone, hovered above, its lights flickering violently. Azira extended her claws, fire flickering faintly around her. "Begone!" she roared. A wave of Drakari energy shot from her hands, striking the leader. The machine's core shattered, and it fell to the snow, motionless. The rest of the swarm collapsed behind it. One by one, their mechanical limbs stopped moving, their scanning lights dimmed. The entire formation fell from the sky like a metal rain, silent and defeated. Elias dropped to his knees, exhausted. Sweat mixed with frost on his face. He looked at Azira, who was struggling to stay upright, her wings trembling. "You did it!" he gasped. She nodded weakly, almost too tired to speak. "We did it together." The aftermath. The colony erupted in cheers as the last of the drones crashed to the ground. Soldiers and settlers rushed out of their homes, staring at the field littered with broken machines. Smoke rose from the remains, but the air was quiet now, peaceful and safe. Elias helped Azira to her feet. She leaned heavily against him, shivering slightly, though her scales still glowed faintly. Her fire had burned almost completely out. "You need rest," Elias said, guiding her back toward the colony. Azira shook her head. "No, the danger has passed. But I cannot stay outside alone. My body, still weak." "Then you'll rest with us," Elias said. "Inside, where it's warm, and we have a blanket." A small smile touched her lips, rare and soft. A blanket. Again. Inside the colony. Inside Elias's home, the heater hummed warmly. Mina rushed forward, wrapping herself around Azira's leg. "You're safe," she cried. Azira bent slightly to meet the small human girl's gaze. "Yes, thanks to her father, and all of you." Mina smiled shyly. You're a dragon. You were amazing. Azira chuckled softly, a sound Elias had never heard before. It was warm and quiet. Perhaps, but even dragons need help sometimes. Elias wrapped a thick blanket around Azira's shoulders, just as he had the night before. She shivered slightly but leaned into the warmth, closing her eyes for the first time in hours. She began, her voice low. I did not think humans would help a stranger. Not like this. Elias shrugged. We help those who fight for life. That's all it takes. Azira's golden eyes softened. I underestimated your species. I thought humans, fragile, weak, would fall easily. Elias smiled gently. Some of us are weak, some of us are strong, but together, we survive. Recognition. Outside the window, Commander Holt and her soldiers began surveying the battlefield. Broken drones littered the field, smoking and inert. For the first time in decades, the colony had faced an enemy from the stars and survived. Holt approached Elias's unit. That was unexpected, she said. I never thought a human and a Drakari could turn the tide like this. Elias shrugged. We had a little help. He glanced at Azira, who nodded faintly. You, Holt said, looking at the Empress. You risked everything. You fought with us. You saved our people. Azira bowed her head slightly. It was necessary. Without this place, without these humans, my species would have no future. Perhaps, now, there is hope. Holt nodded slowly, understanding. Then we owe you more than thanks. We owe you our lives. Azira's eyes flickered with faint emotion. And I owe my life to these humans. Perhaps some bonds are stronger than empires, stronger than fire, stronger than fear. A new beginning. Over the next few days, the colony rebuilt. Settlers repaired walls, patched broken power lines, and cleaned the fields. Children laughed again, playing among the shattered drones. The sense of relief was overwhelming. Azira stayed with Elias and Mina, resting, recovering, and learning. She watched humans work, interact, laugh, and care for each other. Slowly, she began to understand something she had never learned as an Empress. Strength was not only power, it was trust, courage, and connection. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Elias, Mina, and Azira sat outside, wrapped in blankets, watching the stars begin to shine. The night was cold, but the warmth between them was stronger than any fire. Azira turned her head toward Elias. You saved me twice, once from the cold, once from the swarm. Elias smiled. We saved each other. She looked at Mina, then back to Elias. This world is different. Not perfect, but humans. They care. And I belong here, at least for now. Mina hugged Azira's scaled hand. You belong with us. Azira smiled softly, letting the warmth of the blanket and the company of her new human family settle over her. For the first time in a long time, she felt peace. Looking forward, weeks passed. Azira began helping the colony, teaching settlers small ways to use alien technology to improve energy efficiency and defend the settlement. Her experience and knowledge became invaluable. People no longer feared her presence. They respected it, and more importantly, they trusted her. Elias watched her quietly, amazed at how someone so powerful could also be so gentle. Mina laughed and ran around them, pretending to be a small warrior fighting off invisible enemies. Azira's laughter, soft and musical, joined in, blending with the sounds of life that had returned to Haven Ridge. One night, as the stars twinkled overhead, Elias realized something. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and full of unknown threats. But humanity had allies, courage, and hope. And with Azira by their side, maybe, just maybe, They could face whatever came next. Ajira leaned slightly into Elias's side. "Tomorrow," she said softly, "we will continue to protect this place. Together." Elias smiled. Together. And as the cold wind blew across Haven Ridge, it could not touch the warmth inside, the warmth of survival, friendship, and the beginnings of a bond stronger than any empire. For the first time, the last Empress of the Drakari Dominion believed in a future, not ruled by fear, not burned by war, but built with humans, dragons, and the courage to fight for life together. The stars above shone down on them, quiet, endless, full of possibilities. And for Haven Ridge, the dawn had truly arrived.